Good afternoon, Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Tuesday, October the 1st. It's still about a dozen degrees hotter than it's supposed to be this time of the year, but there is some good news out there. Federal Judge Christine Baker yesterday said that she would not dismiss a lawsuit against Senator Jason Rapert, the bumptious Conway Republican who likes to block people from his Facebook and Twitter pages if they disagree with him. The judge says that he's acting as a public official, not in a personal capacity when he does these sorts of things and limiting free speech, and she's inclined to rule in the favor of the plaintiffs, who include the American Atheist Association. She wants some more information. She wants some more legal pleadings. This case isn't decided, but she says Rapert's got an uphill climb in this, and of course that's the case. This follows precedent in a number of other courts, but the U.S. Supreme Court hadn't decided this issue for good yet, so there's more to come. A Dallas jury today convicted Amber Geiger, a former Dallas police officer, of the fatal shooting of Botham Jean, a Harding University graduate who was eating a bowl of ice cream in his apartment when she burst in and killed him, thinking he was in her apartment. She was mistaken about where she was. They could have considered a manslaughter charge. The jury sentenced her to murder. They're now deliberating a penalty for her in that case. The Arkansas Arts Center today broke ground on essentially a new arts center, a dramatic renovation of the existing facility in MacArthur Park. They announced today that fundraising had now reached $122 million with a goal of $128 million. Warren Stevens, the leader of the fund drive, says he hopes they won't stop at 128. The Saracen Casino Resort opened its annex full-time in Pine Bluff this morning. They'd had a brief peek review on the sneak preview, on Friday night. They're now open. They've got bar, drinks, and they also have a sports book, which was approved yesterday by the Arkansas Racing Commission, which regulates casinos in Arkansas. Speaking of gambling, the Arkansas Lottery is touting its 10th anniversary this year. It began in September 10 years ago. During that time, its PR people say that it's paid out $2.8 billion in winnings to lottery ticket buyers. Fails to mention that people had to spend about $4.5 billion to win that money. In other words, you spend $1, you get 68 cents back. Not a very good investment. It has provided several $100 million worth of scholarships for people to go to college. Well, Calvin Adams, a lifer convicted of capital murder in Greene County some years ago, escaped from his barracks holding facility at the Bricky's prison, the East Arkansas Regional Unit, sometime Sunday night. He was found this morning about 8:30 a.m. hiding on a rooftop of the prison beneath a ventilation hood. He hadn't been able to get off the grounds. He'd walked away from the Cummins unit some 10 years ago. U.S. Steel, the big steel company, has paid $700 million for 49.9% of the Big River Steel operation in Mississippi County and has an option to purchase the rest of the companies. It's a part of a big growth pattern for U.S. Steel. Presumably good news for the Big River Steel operation. The Little Rock Education Association, the group that represents Little Rock teachers, met last night to continue their drive for the state to come up with a different plan for managing the Little Rock School District. The idea of segregating it into haves and have-nots is a terrible idea. Also, the Hutchinson administration wants to get rid of the teachers' union. They hate unions. They don't have any really good reason to do this, except they just hate them. Anyway, there's talk of a potential strike if the state follows through with that plan. Rusty Cranford, the former lobbyist and healthcare executive who's been in prison for 18 months now, awaiting sentencing for his role in a huge federal corruption probe. This is the one where bribes and kickbacks were paid to state legislators, and Rusty Cranford was in the big fat middle of it, is asking again to be released from prison pending sentencing, as others have been. He was denied before because he'd been accused of threatening to kill a lobbyist who turned state's evidence in the case. He says he's not a danger to anyone now and would like to be able to spend a little time with family before he begins to serve the rest of his sentence. He's been given a hearing on this complaint at least next week in Springfield, which might indicate the judge is going to reconsider his request. Finally, a piece of news in the newspaper world. You know it's not a good time for newspapers. The Arkansas Democrat-Gazette published Sunday its latest circulation figures as required by the Postal Service. They listed 57,000 paid circulation, including electronic editions. On about the same day 10 years ago, that number was 177,000. That's a big drop. Not so sure there's not some reasons for that drop beyond the industry. Business is affecting everyone. They've yet to run a story about the judge's verdict against the president of the Arkansas Senate, found potentially liable for more than $1 million in damages for working people without pay at his plastics plant in Gravette. He defends himself on this, says they were doing good for him by working out their drug sentences out of a drug court sentence. Well, and A number of judges have said this equates, well, as one attorney put it, and got sued for saying it, almost a slave labor situation. Hendren sued over that characterization. Nonetheless, it is working people without pay. That's not been judged newsworthy in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. They do have a giant story coming tomorrow about somebody requesting a DNA test against Joe Biden's son. How that equates is bigger news than a huge verdict against one of the most prominent figures in Arkansas politics. I don't know. They'll have to explain it to you. I'm Max Brantley. As you can see, I'm resistant. I'll be back tomorrow.